Hello nerds and welcome to Into the Wild, your favourite wildlife and conservation podcast where we look at all things, well, wildlife and conservation.
This is a podcast of curiosity where we know we don't have all the answers.
Oh, that's my co-host Nadia, by the way.
Hi. But it doesn't really matter because we're here to learn and crucially listen to those who are affected by and closest to the issues that we as conservationists tend to pick over from our comfy living rooms.
So strap yourselves in, open up your lugholes, grab a brew and join us as we geek out over nature, share our love for wildlife, rarely take ourselves seriously, all whilst learning. Oh, and we sometimes swear. Hello nerds and welcome back to Into the Wild in 2025.
We're back!
Along with... What else has happened this year?
Well, I mean, you're wondering what's come from 2024 into 2025. We've got, economic downturn, climate change, general political uncertainty, and
the rise of the alt-right.
The rise of the alt-right is getting
billionaires
bigger and bigger.
controlling everything.
And also Into the Wild is cool. You thought we'd be left behind. As all as that was pushing its way through on the M1 or whatever it is, we managed to sneak in a space on the bus and come through to 2025.
It's nice to be on a podcast and host a podcast that's on a list with that
Such
stuff.
great things, which are likely to, I don't know, I haven't got a crystal ball, but to carry further all the way to December 2025.
If it stopped in Feb, I'd be surprised. But welcome back. We should probably tell people how this is changing this year. Should we inform them?
Yeah, let them know.
Let's inform. So, nerds, we've got some things that are changing. As you've already heard, we've got a new weekly series, which is Nature News. So a segment that we had in our episodes last year, where Nadia and I share recent news stories about nature, the natural world, whether it's things that have just happened, maybe happened a couple of weeks ago, or that are coming up that you need to keep your eye on. We have been in January sharing these, and these will be going forward weekly.
Yeah, due to popular demand. I mean, the Into the Wild inbox 2024, my God, was just, guys, why is it monthly? Why is it monthly? Like, oh, I just have to wait like a month. There's so much.
So we thought we'd change that.
So we thought we'd change it. It's just, do you know what the reality is that Ryan and I's podcast, it's not just like, we're not just learning about wildlife. Ryan and I massively, obviously, as you know, care about the political agenda that sits around the environment, but also how the climate is changing, but also how our knowledge and research about species, research. There's so much going on around, like, what we're interested in. There's just this wealth of stuff that's happening all the time. And I think it's just fun to keep up to date more regularly about it.
Absolutely. Basically, what we learned last year is that it's hard to sit there and talk about marine protected areas when there's also some stuff happening on land that's relevant, recent, and we want to talk about this as well. So we thought we would turn that into a bit more of a weekly thing so we can concentrate on the bigger things on a monthly episode.
Absolutely.
So we are starting the year with a mini-series, which many of you, if you follow us on social media, if you follow the podcast, which I hope you all do, you should know about this already. Nadia and I went to Namibia in September last year to record a series called Into the Wild, A Journey Back to Namibia.
What a country it is, eh?
What a country. And this is going to be episode 1 of the 4-part mini-series. And then once that mini-series is done, we'll be going back to our big topic episodes where we look into just anything that impacts the natural world.
It's conversations and topics that are very relevant, such as like reintroductions, do they work? But just generally broader nature conservation issues and themes that come up time and time again as people interested in wildlife. It's not just there, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing stuff around it. It's coming and going. It's being positively affected. It's being negatively affected. We're learning new things through science all the time. These big chunky subjects that we can dive into with the people closest to the work.
I can so tell you've had 4 cups of tea today.
Yeah, I know so much tea. January's great. I'm not allowed a lot of things in January, but I am allowed tea. Therefore, I'm having it all. But no, I also think, crucially, we're diving into this mini series about Namibia, and I think the thing I want to say about it for our British listeners is that, as conservationists, as naturalists, it is, I think, such a huge responsibility to learn about things that is not happening in the UK context.
100%.
We cannot really understand what nature means and our relationship to it if we only understand it in a UK context. Mm-hmm. And so, it is vital listening, because I know some people, I don't know, it's the same kind of people that don't want to watch a movie with subtitles, right? Learn about stuff that's not easy.
Yeah, that's not in your everyday. And I think especially when we look, this mini-series in Namibia is heavily looking at the climate crisis and the impacts on that, and we'll go into that more in a minute. But I think as something that changes symptomatically globally, it's easy to just think about how it's affecting you around you. And in a temperate country where our current symptoms of the climate crisis are quite subtle at times, it's easy to forget it's going on. If, I'm sure there's loads of you listening now going, what are you talking about, Ryan? I never forget about the climate crisis. But there's lots of people within this country that do and don't see it. So what we are trying to do here is go to a country where the impacts of the climate crisis are very real, very severe, and directly impact people. And we are going to basically share that with you and share those experiences to show you really what's going on. I mean, actually, we say that in the Western world, as we record this on January 11th, has already seen massive impacts of the climate crisis with the LA fires.
We're 4 days into a raging fire across LA. And so we're
so the planet's doing it for us already, showing us.
Yeah.
But we're going to go to somewhere a bit more global south. Yeah.
We want to tell some stories. Our job is to tell stories, and I promise you, it will enrich your thinking. It will tilt your thinking, and you will be a better, more empathetic, caring naturalist because of it.
Okay. Well, in true Into the Wild style, then, should we jump into the first episode of Into the Wild, journey back to Namibia?
Get your passport ready. Let's go Heathrow.
Get on the plane. You've had your airport pint. We did.
And free champagne, may I add.
Take Ryan anywhere, he'll get a freebie.
I tell you what, we're about to jump into Namibia. I'm going to introduce you to the country if you don't know about it, but just take us right back to the beginning. Last September, Ryan and I boarded a flight, first of all to Johannesburg and then on to Windhoek in Namibia, and gift of the gab over here, Del Boy. We did get moved to comfier seats and a glass of champagne without having to spend an extra penny. So
I'm a good traveller.
He's a brilliant traveller.
Okay, so nerds, strap yourselves in. Let's jump into episode 1.
Fantastic. So we are going to Namibia, a really beautiful country, a country I had not been to before. And this is a country with a population of about 2.5 million. I think it's going up now, but I didn't have the exact figures. It's a country in southern Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. It shares borders with Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and South Africa. And my God, what a beautiful country.
It's stunning,
isn't it? And it's so big. There's no point even giving you numbers because actually, I don't even know how many. It's just so much bigger in scale than we are used to.
I mean, you can fit the UK in it 3.5 times, I think. I think it's around 3.5 times.
Gosh.
Which, I mean, we drove for many hours at a good 70, 80 kilometres an hour on roads, and we travelled, I don't know, less than a ninth of that country.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Just a tiny little fraction.
Yeah, tiny bit, just in the northwest. So it's large scale.
It's large. And so when we landed, I just want to paint a picture. I mean, maybe you've experienced this before when you get to a different country and the plane door opens and then you are hit with so many things are going on sensory in that moment, right? Like smells, the humidity level, of which there is none.
There is no humidity in that country.
The heat and the landscape is so utterly different to our temperate isles that we are used to with the lush, verdant, green, mossy, rolling hills and trees. But this was a landscape of ochre, sand, yellow, gold, brown, the rock formations.
Yeah.
I remember actually Ryan was saying it's such a flat landscape. I got there and I thought, God, there's these beautiful undulating hills and these incredible rocky sort of outcrops just coming out of this incredibly, I don't know,
it was bordering mountainous.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. It's
I will say, I've got to say this, because Nadia's going to bring this up across every single episode. I wouldn't stop telling her how flat Namibia was, because my previous experience on the roads that we were on were very flat.
Yeah.
Our guide, who we'll tell you more about in a minute, decided to drive us a different route, which was anything but flat.
Yes, I know. Just actually, not flat, but actually some of the most extraordinary rock formations that in terms of those geology nerds out there, I know the Venn diagram of naturalists and geologists. There is crossover. If that's you would love Namibia. And so even within a very short period of time leaving the airport, all of a sudden I feel like I am in this wild landscape. This is a very dry landscape we're looking at, not a lot of grasses and some shrubs sticking out. And I must say that my experience of arriving in Namibia, I am coming into a country that is going through 12 years of drought. 12 years, no rainfall. I don't know whether you can imagine that, what that does to a landscape. I'm landing in Namibia going, oh, this is what Namibia looks like, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. What I came to learn through my time there is it is historically and naturally a country of extremes, but the most vibrant extremes. We're talking dry, big red sunsets and you know, that kind of mirage type landscapes, and presumably the side of it I didn't see, which is biblical type rains and grasses and huge
booms in wildlife.
And booms in wildlife and mass migration. Having said that, we did, you know, very early on see giraffe and warthog and ostrich.
Oh, the
fairly
ostrich.
immediately, which was pretty
And it wasn't
cool.
long. We saw meerkats as well. And I'd never seen meerkats in the wild. That was exciting.
That was pretty special.
Yeah.
So long roads, long drives, lots of birds. I did keep a bird list. We can dig into that later for the bird nerds out there.
Did she keep a bird list?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, do not travel in a brand new country with people that do not pull over for birds. Maxie, are you listening? This is for you. I'll never forgive the moment when I wanted to stop an idea busted and you thought I needed a wee, so passionately engaged with my request. But then when I said it was for a bird, I think you waved your hand and carried on driving.
That's literally what happened.
So that's where we are. But this is a country that since prehistoric times, you've got to remember that the way we see borders, the borders of Namibia are relatively new speaking, but for millennia, since prehistoric times, different tribes such as the Damara and the Nama people have lived in Namibia. And Namibia is a patchwork of areas where different tribes will have existed and coexisted for hundreds and hundreds of years. That is until 1884, and the German Empire established rule over most of the territory. So in come Germany.
Can I just say, I was that a lot of people ask me why I keep going back to Namibia to do stuff, and I'll be that there's about 40% of me that goes because as a British man, it's one country, especially in Southern Africa, I can go, wasn't us.
It's great.
It was us everywhere else, and I am shameful for that. But I don't feel that shame in Namibia.
I sense that. I mean, I felt it, eh?
I still felt guilt.
I was very
for
much
it.
landing in Windhoek. You know.
Yeah.
And so they formed a colony known as the German Southwest Africa. And then early into the 20th century, there was, you know, mass genocide of the Nama and Herero. I think Herero is got a role in it. People. And that German rule and colony ended around about the time of the First World War. They had other things to think about.
There was more. Greater pressures nearer to home, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But that wasn't free sailing for Namibia, actually. It was push from those in South Africa to then take over, I guess, rule, dominance, colonization, oppression of the different tribes and peoples of the area of Namibia. And Namibia also went through apartheid, as did South Africa. And it officially gained its independence in 1990. So this is the country that we are in. We are entering a country not long free from oppression and apartheid that has been colonized by the West. Let's not brush off responsibility here.
No, absolutely
whether it was
not. No.
Britain or Germany, it's all that energy.
I will say, can I say to the people listening now, just hold that a minute, that this is 35 years a country's been independent. So as we go on through this mini-series, you're older than its independence.
Oh my God.
I'm on par with it, but we don't need to talk about that. But when we go through this mini-series and we talk about the systems that people are working with, just remember that some of these are going to be these systems will be way less than 35 years old. So it's almost unfair to criticize anything they're doing. I think it's often easy to kind of learn about things somewhere else and go, yeah, but does that work? It's like, whoa, this is early days.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think that's very important to hold that with the independence.
Don't criticize.
Don't criticize.
So this is a country that we're in, a very, very beautiful country, one of semi-desert, scrub, a much smaller population, bigger landmass than we can imagine, if you can try and imagine that. And we land in the capital city, Windhoek, a very small to probably my eyes, sprawling city. And there we meet
Maxie.
There we go.
Lewis, who was our guide. Now,
tell us a little bit about how we did this, how we traveled through Namibia, who we met.
Maxie, how do you explain an enigma of a human being?
I mean, I painted a picture. She doesn't like birds.
So Maxi, I met 4 years ago. People that have listened to Into the Wild for a while will know we've done a few collaborative episodes with people in Namibia, and we've made an award-winning film which is on YouTube, and I will plug that now, called Beyond the Trigger. Look that up. It was a work with Maxi Lewis as well. So Maxi is the director of an organisation called NACSO, which stands for the Namibian Association for Community-Based Natural Resource Management Support Organisations. Very, very big title, but basically it's an umbrella organisation which brings in many different people and community representatives to support people rurally that directly rely on their natural resources to survive. Maxi used to come from kind of an ecotourism route, but as she started to travel her country more and more, she realised that people have different attitudes, different ways of living, and realised that ecotourism as a kind of one thing cannot answer all questions or solve all solutions. So that's when she really started to get in with her work with NACSO and work with conservancies that she had never been before. That's probably, we need to explain what a conservancy.
We need to explain. So we've told you who we're going to meet and why we're here, and a bit of a picture of the landscape, but actually it's really relevant to understand land isn't just land, right? It's made up of different rules, areas and boundaries, such as the UK. We understand national parks, private ownership, different kinds of landscapes, but let's have a little think about Maxi's, I think, going to introduce us into understanding this idea of a conservancy.
Yeah. So there's basically no one better to show us around different conservancies to meet rural people than Maxi Lewis, because everyone knows Maxi. A lot of people adore Maxi, and she's just very good at bringing people together and bringing these chats. So, but before we get into those, we're going to tell you what a conservancy is, and Maxi told us on our journey. So here's a clip from when we were driving on one of our days in Namibia with Maxi telling us exactly what a conservancy is.
So, Maxi, what I wanted to ask, we keep using the word conservancy. What is that?
So, conservancies is a group of communities on what we call communal land, which is like a common age. Normally, the land is very much open. It's an open land landscape. But then within this landscape, there are communities or people that live on this landscape. And what they do is that they make a voluntary decision to form a group of people that are very concerned or that really want to manage wildlife and other resources on the land, not just wildlife. It could be forest, it could be anything on the land. Let's call it like manage the ecosystem. And then within that ecosystem, you will have people, and they will be the ones that make a decision then to register everybody on that common age and make sure that legally then they will have an application to the government, and the government will give them status as a conservancy. So we have conservancies, we have what we call community forests, and then we also have what we call fish reserves, community fish reserves. So those are landscapes. Sometimes they are intertwined, like they might be an overlap between a conservancy and a community forest. And sometimes you might have an overlap between a conservancy. So when I say a conservancy, it could be a wildlife conservancy, overlapping with forestry or overlapping with a fishing reserves. So in Namibia, we have around 87 of these conservancies, around 46 community forests, and close minus around 16, they are also in counting, community fish reserves. So that actually totaling up quite a lot of mass land that is then being dedicated or being managed by a conservancy. So in terms of the governance structure of a conservancy, normally they have what they call an annual general meeting where they elect committee members, which is like a board. Yeah. And these committee members then will manage the land or the resources on behalf of everybody within that community. So that is what a conservancy is. Community conservation programs within the country.
So there you go. There's an in-depth look on what conservancies are and how they work. And that was the first time you had really learned about them.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, obviously, my mind is deeply colonized, and I think that every country is like the UK. No, it is pretty amazing to learn. You know, you told me about conservancies before, but like this idea that there are vast We're not just talking like a park here.
I'm trying to think of how to tell someone how big this is.
Conservancies, I mean, we're driving through them for
hours. Yeah.
And these are fully democratic bits of land which are managed by the people that live on that land. And we are now, thanks to like Robin Wall Kimmerer and other authors and current modern thinking, there is a shift within our conservation society at the moment, which is like, humans are nature. Nature is people. And we're kind of getting it, and we're separate. The Conservancy model really demonstrates how that's kind of alive and breathing. Bearing in mind they're a modern structure, that also makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's
Which
true.
is that the same people, the same elders who are counting wildlife, stopping it being poached, which is a word we'll come on to.
Yeah, we'll talk way more about poaching,
and who are thinking about conservation, wildlife, nature, are the same people who are making sure that the elderly have Christmas presents. They are the same people who are making sure there is enough water for people to drink, where the schools are. They're having to be consulted on young people getting houses. Yeah. The human animal in that landscape is considered as part of that conservancies, as is the rhino, as is the elephant, as is the kudu, and that kind of really excites me as a vision.
It does, and it's something we just don't have that here.
No.
Do you know what I mean? That's not a system we have here, and I think I remember talking to one evening we were talking to Maxi about conservancies and and how I'm working with them, how it is working with was it 86 conservancies or 87? Maxi said there. How is it working? And she said, it's not easy because it's people at the end of the day. It's people's lives, and whilst it's a system that you and I look at and go, that is amazing. There are, it doesn't always work. You've got to agree with each other. You've got to work things out. But I don't know.
Oh, it's better than somebody in like the capital, like some, hyped up politician.
Yeah.
Deciding, someone in Westminster deciding what someone in Barnsley should do. I haven't got a clue. I haven't been in Barnsley.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly
what
that.
People need.
We're not saying there's a perfect system that exists, but we're saying that there's more, I don't know, autonomy. I'm trying to think of a word like.
Well, I mean,
there's
I guess
systems with more autonomy.
Local communities have got agency.
Yeah.
About the resources within their conservancy will bring in money. Who gets to spend that money? And actually, literally, I remember talking to a chap. It was when we went to that farm where we had goat's head stew. That chap there who'd been voted in again as conservancy leader. Yeah, we'll tell you about that one. And he was saying that he got to decide how much to spend that year on making sure that everyone got fresh water. And he's telling me about, he's literally making this many million for this. And he's just literally making those decisions based on what people need.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think most of the pressures within the democracy of these conservancies come from things like climate change, which we will dive into.
Yeah.
But just to paint a picture of why conservancies are important and why we're talking about this wider picture, Maxi's just going to quickly tell you about the spread of people and where people live in Namibia. We've spoken about it as of its habitat and things like that, but what does it look like?
I would say around 60% of Namibians really depend on their natural resources in terms of making a living. So they have small businesses, even the big farms. I mean, it's not just big farms and so forth. So everybody actually depend on their resources, on natural resources in the country. And the majority of our people, our communities live in rural areas. So as a result, they are very, very much dependent on agriculture.
So I guess it's kind of like where we would have been like 300, 400 years ago.
Yeah,
most of us living in rural areas.
Yeah, relying on the environment and land around
subsistence
us.
Living.
Yeah, subsistence
so you build your house from the stuff that you cut down.
Yep.
And then you grow the food from the soil that you're standing on.
Graze your animals on the grasses around you.
Or hunt wild animals. Which is, it's so funny, isn't it? The way she says, most people rely on the natural resources. And I'm like, you do realise everybody relies on natural resources.
Everyone does. Knew. Directly, though.
Yeah, that kind of directly, right?
If I don't get wood tonight... Sorry, my mind went to a 14-year-old.
You feel the wood tonight?
If I don't collect wood tonight, I might not. I won't have a fire to heat my house.
Yeah, right. Okay, there's not another option.
There's not another option for it. Yeah. If I don't graze my animals tonight, they won't eat and they could, not survive the night. Or if I get water, so it's that more direct reliance on the natural.
Whereas
resources.
The steps between me having my dinner tonight with you and the land processes, the ecology is like, I would say 1 million steps.
Yeah.
You know,
I've not counted them all, but I would say up and over,
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just relevant to mention that kind of idea that all natural resources are literally what we all need to survive. But there is, you know, a really direct pre-colonization by Germany. These are a people whose stories and livelihoods remained in a place for millennia, unbroken, that lineage. Like, we got to feel that, I guess, a little bit. And the pain,
we definitely did. Yeah.
The pain of the rapidity, that might not be a word. How rapid something is that a word?
It is now.
It is, yeah.
If you're here for anything else on Into the Wild, the one thing you can guarantee is we will make words up.
Yes, and oh my God. But also they sound real.
I think if you use it with chest.
It's how language is made,
like, no one's going to doubt you.
It does sound how language is made. So, I mean, that leads us into the first episode that we're going to do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the mini-series, which is climate change. Like, it is so overwhelmingly dominated everything that we did.
Although this is, so we weren't sure when me and Nadia were sitting down going, right, let's create this mini-series. We're like, is it a 4-part or is it a 3-part? And we're like, we need to do this. This introduction we're doing now is technically episode 1, right? We are telling you about our trip, about Namibia. We want to take you on the journey that we have gone to when we've gone to Namibia. Not just like with the information, but kind of visually. We really want you to see the country. We want you to feel what it feels like, and you're going to get that across the series. I also think it's important, I might do this here, is you and I spoke about how we feel about the climate crisis before we went. We spoke a lot about it and said, what's our kind of, you know, where are you at? How are you feeling with it all? Like, where are you at mentally and stuff?
It's like a thing, isn't it, that people discuss and have a position on.
And also, but also just like, you know,
like a feeling on.
You know, with the recent LA fires, I've cried.
Yeah.
I've been upset, and I feel it when it happens.
I haven't cried. I'm doing like a mad laughter. Like
you're in the crazy stage.
Like this like, no, but like I'm not even laughing. I'm just like, what?
Oh God. Sure. Yeah. So what? And then when we came back, on the flight back, we were talking about now, how do we feel about it after going somewhere and seeing? So what I'm going to ask you nerds to do is just take 30 seconds. Oscar will put some lovely music for you, but just have some...
Take a breather.
Have 30 seconds just to think about how you feel and where you're at mentally with the climate crisis. Don't spiral. We're here for you. We got you. We're right behind you. But just have that little feeling, because we're going to ask you to do this at the end of episode 4 in a few months as well, just so you can kind of go on the journey that we went. So here you go. Have that 30 seconds to think about how you feel.
Hope that was okay for you.
I really hope you're still okay. I really do.
Here?
I really do.
Yeah,
we're here for you.
Do.
It's heavy, but these things are important to put ourselves in emotionally, sometimes safely, so we can, really, I don't know, be aware.
Yeah,
I think.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that is the next episode that you're going to listen to. Is we're really going to do a deep dive into the climate change. Maxie really beautifully, actually, and vulnerably takes us through her life growing up in the 70s through to the 80s, the 90s and the 2000s, and the noticeable climate change. And then Ryan and I will take you through the landscapes that we've been through and how climate change is affected as we meet farmers and if we meet conservancy leaders and elders, but also people working in the tourist industry, and talking about what has climate done to that landscape. What has it done to the people? And what is climate?
Yeah, well, so the next episode will be about that. And then there's 2 more factors that we're going to focus on, which will be, maybe it's hard to consider this anything to do with wildlife, but it really does have a strong, believe me, and you'll learn that it's got a strong thing to do with wildlife. We'll be looking at food security for these people in episode 3 as well.
I wonder whether, as well as you're listening, whether that came up for you.
Yeah.
Do you worry about food security?
That's
another thing to think about.
Because the people we met are greatly concerned about food and the sustainability of food and the security of food. from subsistence farmers to farms supporting each other. So actually, like, that community growing a bit more, rather than just farming yourself, you're then farming with your neighbors. So we'll be looking about that and how these communities in such a rural area, in these strong impacts of the climate crisis, are still delivering food for them.
And it intersects. There's so many different ways that food security is interesting.
Yeah.
And that's from the government's ability to subsidize food to communities. Also how people are going to irrigate and grow. The animals moving in huge numbers across Africa, the African continent, as a result of where the rains are. Food comes in many different forms, even to the point where actually communities where they've actually started growing a lot more fresh vegetables and relying less on meat, which is a really important shift that we'll talk about, diet shift and cultural shift, has meant that elephants are like, oh great, you're growing some tomatoes.
You're growing some food for us.
The elephants are coming in and like eating these damn things. And so it's a really interesting set of conversations that we'll have around food security. We will try as we go through this process to reflect on ourselves and what that feels like for our food security, like Waitrose has run out of avocados, that kind of shit.
Yeah. And then the last episode 4, we're going to look at something, and Nadia mentioned it very briefly there, is that, and I think this is something we do not focus on at all, I think, when we look at the climate crisis or the natural world, but that is culture, and how culture and community breaks down in severe impacts of the climate crisis.
And this is, from me in the work that I do, trying to kind of like understand racial inequality within communities in the UK and through the impacts of climate change. Like, Germany landed in 1884 in Namibia. And, we quite confidently understand and can name genocide and colonial activity in terms of what they did in that country, in terms of claiming rule and committing genocide. The hand of colonialism reaches really far. Maxi mentions to us in one of the conversations about how it was first colonialism that pushed Herero people. And then she goes, and then later the environment, because of climate change, the Taraba. And I was like, climate change is kind of an extension of colonialism,
no, it
right?
absolutely is. It absolutely is.
But the piece that we met, you talk about people really flippantly, but it is what happens when you have community and culture breakdown alongside the loss of resources and wildlife, and how they're all interlinked. The reason why me and Ryan do this podcast is because we care about all of those pieces and we try and fit them together as much as possible.
Well, to add to your point there, colonialism is the removal of culture a lot of the time, is removing stuff, going, no, this is and
it's done directly.
And it's done directly. Yeah.
So you kill the elders, you kill the storytellers.
You get rid of it.
You get, as happened in North America, you take young Indigenous people and you teach them English and you tell them you don't learn your mother tongue.
Incorrect, quote unquote, the right way to do things.
Or it's indirectly, is that drought happens for 12 years. And so a community who are deeply and spiritually connected to, maybe it's a rocky outcrop, a specific area which has cultural importance, have to leave it. So it's indirect and direct tearing from culture. And what does that do? And we'll try in our best, we haven't recorded it yet, but to place it within the context of our own cultural loss so that we can carry on connecting our kind of Western understanding and what we experienced in Namibia.
So as you can hear, we've got 4 episodes. Well, this one is kind of a nice roundup of, kind of our trip and what you can expect. And so you can really get an understanding of Namibia. Episode 2, looking at the climate crisis, the impacts, how it's impacted communities, how it's changed over the last 35, 40 years. Episode 3, food security. How the hell are people feeding themselves in environments like the semi-desert when we've got impacts of the climate crisis and a 12-year-long drought? Episode 4, looking at how culture and community lives have been impacted by the climate crisis and what that means for the future of a country like Namibia as well. So I know this, as we've described what's coming up in this mini-series, it is heavy. It sounds heavy, right? Nadia and I are going to be talking about things that are, might create a bit of anxiety. You're going to be hearing from people that are living on the front line of the climate crisis. So their experience, their feelings are going to be quite raw. But I want you lot to know that you can do this. We can have this chat, right? This is an important thing for us to talk about.
It's our responsibility.
It's our responsibility, especially living in the West, for us to go, we can have this conversation, we can listen, we can learn, and we can get through it stronger on the other side and have the hope and the resilience, just like the people that we met.
Oh, man.
Because there was so much of that. And it kind of made me stand back and go, when people on the front line are talking to us with that kind of optimistic attitude, then I will stand side by side with them with that.
It's kind of like, I don't want to romanticize it, but I guess what I think you're trying to say is that, like, we don't really have time. Like grieving for something that's really sad is really important, but you must grieve it and move on. The world, the elephant, the aurochs, all of these animals don't need people in the West to sit and cry and panic about it. Actually, we need to cry and panic about it together and then go, okay, next, what do we do? What do we do?
No, absolutely.
That's
and
what
I
we
think
need to hold.
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is there's going to be moments of light relief throughout this as well. Like, we can get through this conversation. It will be heavy, but there's going to be moments of hope, joy, laughter. We've got this and we've got you, nerds, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean,
what are you doing?
Can't go through a week with you and not have a laugh. Is that right?
That's what I like people to say.
He was great. And obviously, we're in Namibia. We're naturalists. We geeked out on so much wildlife. We cried over lions. We laughed at giraffes. I don't know why they're not that funny, but I guess they are.
Yeah.
And, we were astonished at meerkats.
We were. I never thought I'd be astonished by a meerkat.
And I tell you what, my binoculars were so tightly stuck to my hands and my neck. Guys, this is the bit you've actually been waiting for, which is, I guess, the definitive bird list of Namibia 2024. So I'm just going to start. Sorry, these are not in taxonomical order. These are just in the order of which I saw them. So pale chanting goshawk, common kestrel, helmeted guinea fowl, red-billed spurfowl, white-quilled bustard. I think I needed to check on that one.
So that is the end of
where
episode 1. It's kind of a recap of what we're going to be doing over the next 4 episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into the Wild. Don't forget, you can check us out on social media. We are not really on X anymore for obvious reasons, but we are on Blue Sky and Instagram at Into the Wild Pod. Make sure you're subscribed. She's still going with that bird list. We're there on X. We're not really on X. It's a bit too musky. We don't really want to be involved with that at the moment. But we are still there if you're on there, if you want to follow us. And we will be releasing the episodes on there as well. If at any point any of you nerds have a little bit of cash left over and you want to give it to your favourite wildlife podcast to keep these kind of episodes going, you can do so at www.coffee.com/intothewildpod. Anything you give goes straight back into the show, and we love you forever. Is our bird list done? Are you finished with that bird list?
Well, I really feel like you did care about it.
Nerds, Nadia and I are so excited to bring you this series to share the experiences of people living on the front line of the climate crisis. And don't worry, we've got you the whole way. It's going to be good.
Bye.